Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me tell you what this show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real things. That's TINGS, real things. Um, so, we like to focus on a variety of topics, but we tend to stay within particular arenas. We tend to focus on education, mental health, chronic illnesses, any physical health issues. We tend to focus on what some may say, maybe it's softball topics, but we like to do deep dive into those topics as well. But all wherever we go, whatever direction that we go in, the purpose is for you to leave this episode feeling more informed, gaining more knowledge than what you did coming in. So that is our intention for this show. So as we are a part of a Step Ahead Tutoring Services, which is my company, we want to educate you. We want to teach you. We want you to learn. And today is another learning experience here on Hot Topics. So let me tell you what today's topic is. So today's topic is, oh, I forgot to make the banner for it. All right. But today's topic is calm under pressure, managing test anxiety. Let me just put that here real quick. Okay. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, so let me just get this banner up here. There we go. I'm just going to put that banner up on the screen. Yes, so that is our topic for today. So today we're going to be talking about test anxiety. We're going to be talking about ways to recognize it, things that we could do about it, right? So we're going to be having that conversation today about test anxiety. So one more time, let me tell you what that topic is. Today's topic is calm under pressure, managing test anxiety. So we're going to be talking about test anxiety, what to look for, what it looks like, what's the manifestations, all that good stuff. Okay. And let me tell you who my guest is that is going to help me with that discussion. So his name, ah, there it is. So his name is Craig Meriwether. That's right. So my guest today, his name is Craig Meriwether, and he is going to help me with this discussion about test anxiety. But while before I bring him on the stage, I'm going to tell you about him. So, who is Craig Meriwether? So let me tell you about him. Let me tell you about my guest today. So Craig is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnosis specialist. He's a neuro-linguistic programming specialist and founder of Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may be keeping them from reaching their full potential. For over 12 years, Craig has been helping people heal from early childhood trauma, helping cancer patients with pain control, veterans with post traumatic stress disorder, students with test anxiety, children with nightmares, entrepreneurs with confidence, athletes with peak performance, and anyone who may be dealing with overwhelm, fear, and anxiety. Craig has created ACE Any Test, the most comprehensive course for any test anxiety relief, so people can eliminate anxiety around exams, auditions, job interviews, and public speaking, as well as increase confidence and self esteem. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bring Craig to the stage. Hello, Craig. How's it
Hello,
going?
Gabrielle. How are you?
Good, 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 good.
Yeah. Hey,
All
you
right.
have the best theme music of any podcast.
I do.
That's better than a cup of coffee. I should have that in my car as I drive to work or something.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right, so yes, so we're here to All right, so we're here to talk about test anxiety. You are a certified hypnotherapist.
Hypnotherapist. Yeah, yeah.
Tell us, maybe tell us what, briefly what that is and
Briefly, okay. I'll
how does
try to be succinct, but I know there's a lot of baggage around the word, hypnosis and hypnotherapy, which is really unfortunate because it's a really great tool, some great techniques to help you fix yourself. And it's the idea that maybe somebody is struggling with anxiety or anger or lacking in confidence or maybe other issues. And these issues are stored within the subconscious mind. Now we have the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and I know there's now some disagreement about that. Mind is just one thing, but just in terms of the discussion right now, we have the conscious mind and subconscious mind. Now, subconscious mind, it's there to run your digestive system. It's there to beat your heart and breathe your lungs, to take a day-old baby to an adult without having, you don't have to think about this stuff. You have a cut on your finger, you don't have to think about it. It just starts to heal itself. The subconscious mind knows what the problem is and knows where the cut is. If you get a cut on your index finger of your left hand, it doesn't send all those white blood cells to the pinky finger of your right hand. It knows what the problem is. If you ever had that experience of, someone point, hey, you got a big scrape on your arm. You're like, what? I didn't know that. Subconscious mind knew and started the healing process without you even knowing it. Subconscious mind knows what the problem is. It also actually knows what to do about it. So that's a big aspect of subconscious mind, just running the body behind the scenes, as it were, behind the big veil. It has the ability to hold on to those habits that we have, like tying our shoes and zipping up our jacket and walking down the street, riding a bicycle, all those things. But its main job is to keep us safe and protected. And it does this by kind of having this radar of always looking out for danger through our five senses, what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. You smell smoke, you got a problem. You see an issue, you hear something, even in deep sleep, you hear that back door creak open at 4 a.m. or the baby's coughing or sneezing or something. You're going to hear that and you're going to wake up. That's your subconscious mind. Its main job is to keep us safe and protected. And one of the ways it does this is by holding on to old hurt and pain and maybe even trauma, the things we've experienced, whether it was yesterday, last week, last month, or 50 years ago when we were a little kid, and now we're a big time adult, right? So sort of like it has this filing cabinet, and it holds on to all that hurt and that pain and that trauma and the embarrassment and the humiliation because it doesn't want to experience it again. And so as we go through life, if anything triggers one of those files, even just slightly, just sort of kind of looks like it feels familiar, feels similar to something that happened 50 years ago or 40 years ago or something when we were a little kid. And the alarm systems will go off because, again, it wants to protect us, keep us safe, warn us that there's danger. So when somebody pulls a fire alarm in a building, the alarms go off, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody that there's danger. Well, we also have a warning system. But instead of sirens and lights, we have feeling states. The feeling state of anxiety, the feeling state of fear, the feeling state of worry and overwhelm, of anger. These are warnings that there's something dangerous in our external environment. Now, one aspect of being human is that the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare in the middle of the night. And it doesn't matter how crazy or how ridiculous or how realistic it may be. Now, if you've ever had this experience or know somebody if you have kids who've had nightmares in the past, maybe it's something super realistic. And maybe it's a war veteran having a PTSD dream about being in combat, even though that was 30 years ago. Or maybe something super ridiculous, like a gigantic cheeseburger is chasing you down the street throwing coconuts at you. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. But in that instant, our subconscious mind has this shoot first, ask questions later safety protocol. It'll turn on the stress response. It's trying to armor you from this attack from this gigantic cheeseburger or the war that happened 30 years ago. You're safe and comfortable in bed, but it thinks you're under attack. So it'll literally change your physiology. The brain will start creating the adrenaline and cortisol. Dump all those hormones of stress and anxiousness into your bloodstream. Your heart starts racing to get it to the big muscles of your arms to fight, big muscles of your legs to escape. 300% more blood is moving to the big muscles of your arms to fight. 300% more blood to the big muscles of your legs to escape. It's got to come from somewhere. So it's turning down the power of your immune system, your digestive system. This is not an efficient way or an easy way to run the body. It's really difficult, but it's doing it because it thinks you're in danger from this gigantic cheeseburger. All in deep sleep. Maybe you wake up with a scream because it wants you consciously aware of the danger. Maybe you're sweating to try to cool down your body. Literally had a physical response to a somewhat ridiculous scenario of a cheeseburger chasing down the street. So you can imagine what's happening in your waking world, whether it's issues of family, issues of health, issues that happened 40 years ago that may still be in that filing cabinet. And so this subconscious mind is there to protect you. It may not seem like that sometimes, especially when you got to get that math test done. You got that job interview. You're a musician or an actor, and you got that audition. You're meeting the in-laws for Thanksgiving dinner. That protective device, that armoring, because you're nervous, because it's an unknown situation, can change your physiology. Now, that's that's the subconscious mind. It's just a highly emotionalized mind there to protect you and hold on to your habits and do all those behind the scenes things of growing the body and growing our hair and our healing cuts and wounds and things. That's the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is the logical mind, the analytical mind, the mind that sets up your plans, your goals. You have your goals. Here's the plans to achieve them, the willpower to go after those goals, to study a little bit harder, to get to the gym before work and all that stuff. That's your conscious mind. But what neuroscience says is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So when there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why none of this has to make any sense. That's why getting nervous before a math test or the job interview or the audition or meeting people at the networking event or Thanksgiving dinner, that doesn't make any sense why you get so nervous. Well, it doesn't have to make sense. Somewhere there is some programming, some computer code that was installed by you. And that's not to blame the victim or say it's your fault. People go through extraordinary trauma and abuse and other issues of humiliation and embarrassment in front of class, giving the book report or the history report or something. But it doesn't have to make any sense in the situation. If that was when you were a kid, so you think as an adult, maybe you should be over it by now, but that's not the way it works. The subconscious mind is there to protect you. Now, what hypnotherapy can help is access the subconscious mind. This is not talk therapy. Talk therapy can be very helpful, very useful, very healing. But that's the conscious mind, where you're logically trying to analyze a situation and create a different result. Well, if you're not really sure what the problem is, and if the problem is maybe 40 years old, or something as maybe unrealistic as a cheeseburger chasing you down the street, a logical analysis of that situation may not be helpful. That's where hypnotherapy comes in. By relaxing the mind and body, even just slightly, you can move into that alpha brainwave state. And that's the biology of it. The famous ones we learned about in school, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Beta is consciousness. It's in this present moment. It's paying attention to the math teacher. And you're writing notes because it's going to be on the final. But then it's boring and it's not so much fun. And so you start staring out the window and you move into that daydreaming state. You start thinking about the future, how the weekend's coming up, how much fun you're going to have. Start thinking about the past, the vacation you took, hanging out with friends last weekend and how much fun that was. You've moved out of this present state of consciousness, out of this present moment. You've altered your state of consciousness and you moved into the alpha brainwave state. And it's literally the biology of it. And I'm being very simplistic here, but the biology of it is basically how fast your brain is operating, how fast the neurons, the brain cells in your head are firing to each other. We've seen those videos on YouTube and biology documentaries and things about the brain, that lightning storm in the head when you're walking down the street or thinking a thought or, feeling an emotion even, the lightning storm. Well, how fast that lightning storm happens determines what brainwave state you're in. And what we do with hypnotherapy, and that's where that you're getting sleepy stereotype and that trope comes from, is that we want to relax the mind and the body to the point that you're kind of quote unquote bored into this alpha brainwave state. It's something natural. It's something we do all the time. That's the whole point of meditation, whether it's Zen meditation or transcendental meditation, to bring yourself back to the present moment with this breath, with this mantra. Well, that's because our mind keeps floating away. Well, we want that to happen because that's accessing our ability to access the subconscious mind becomes greater in that alpha and even theta brainwave state, that kind of not asleep really, but not really awake. And so I know this is kind of a long answer to maybe somewhat of a short question of what hypnotherapy is, but hypnotherapy is a therapeutic tool to help release and let go of what may be in that filing cabinet. And I said this before, and it may be a little blunt, but you're the one who put those files in there. You didn't deserve it. It wasn't your fault. It shouldn't have happened, especially if you were a child. It's not to blame the victim or blame you, but it actually becomes very empowering when you think about it, because if you're the one who put those files in there on how to protect yourself, and maybe the best thing you could have done as a child is to protect yourself in that way, to hide, to make yourself small. That's not going to work as an adult. Maybe it's the best thing as a child, but that computer programming is still in there. Those files are still in a filing cabinet. You may still be armoring yourself. Well, you're the one who put them in there. Again, under duress, maybe through trauma, probably all unconsciously, maybe as a child. But if you're the one who put them in there, you're the one who can take them out. You're the one who can fix it. And that's the extraordinariness of this work. I don't fix anybody. And hypnotherapy in of itself doesn't fix anybody. You're going to fix yourself. And who better to know what the problem is than you? And who better to know what to do about it? That's the power of the subconscious mind. Again, it knows what the problem is. It's just there's some programming in there thinks it's trying to protect you by doing these other things. And the warning systems keep going on, off all the time. That feelings of anxiety maybe, or anger, or resentment, or worry, or overwhelm. Well, you can change that. And maybe we can get more into the deeper conversation about that, and show you a couple of exercises on how to start resetting your nervous system and changing brain chemistry pretty quickly. But that's the power of hypnotherapy. I know hypnosis has a lot of baggage to that word because of TV and movies, which is super unfortunate. Las Vegas shows. And really quickly, I'll wrap this up. But the word hypnosis comes from Greek mythology and the Greek god Hypnos, who is the Greek god of sleep. Now, back in the early 1800s, there's a doctor, Dr. James Esdell. He was in India. And back in the early 1800s, you didn't have fancy hospitals or fancy anesthesia, anything like that. If you having to have your leg amputated, you're biting down on a stick, friend. You're getting a blow to the head to knock you unconscious. Horrible. Well, being in India, Dr. James Esdell learned about this trance state that people could drop into. And so he started practicing with this, and he learned how to put people into a deep, deep trance state. So it looked like they were in a coma. And so he could do amputations. He could cut people open with a knife and take out tumors, and they wouldn't move. They were in this coma-like state. And, deal with injuries and war wounds and things like that. Well, he went back to England. He brought it to England, started telling people about it and working with it. Another doctor, Dr. James Braid, also started working with it, wanting a word to describe this coma-like state, describe it in his writings and to discuss it with his colleagues, decided to name it after the Greek god of sleep, and he called it hypnosis. And since then, this term, this word, has grown to encompass all sorts of altered states of consciousness. Watching TV puts you in an altered state of consciousness of the alpha brainwave state. Being bored in high school math class, or that meeting at work, or the networking event, it puts you in the alpha brainwave state. That's a state now known as hypnosis. The hypnagogic trance state is a fancy term to impress your family and friends. And it's the alpha, theta, and delta brainwave state. That's it. And I know there's a long explanation of it, but it's actually quite simple and quite powerful. And I know people maybe have seen those Las Vegas shows, the hypnotist shows, and they, while entertaining, it also produces a little fear. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to some hypnotherapist and sing like Elvis Presley and dance like Michael Jackson and bark like a dog. It's like, well, you have to understand, everybody that goes up on that stage volunteered to be up on that stage. So it's really about your intention. I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. I can't. Otherwise, smoking cessation, helping people to quit smoking, would be 100% guarantee. I just go into every Las Vegas bar and casino and just make people quit smoking. be healthier for everybody. But I can't do that because some people don't want to quit smoking. I'd be able to hypnotize my way into the UN, the United Nations, and hypnotize all the world leaders to create world peace and end war. I'd be able to hypnotize Elon Musk to write me $1 billion check. The reason I don't have $1 billion check is because Elon Musk doesn't want to write me one. And so getting up on that stage, every single person volunteered. And that hypnotist comes out and, welcome everybody, we're going to have a great show. And who are they going to pick? The introvert in the back of the room, hiding in the shadows, sinking down in their chair, trying to hide themselves, or the extrovert in the front row jumping up and down saying, pick me, pick me. One's going to be a better candidate for having fun up on stage. And that's the point. They want to be part of the show. They want to be star of the show. They're an exhibitionist. They're an extrovert. They want to have fun. And they all have a big smile on their face at the end of it. So it's really about your intention. If your intention is to have fun at a show, at a comedy club, or in Las Vegas, you're going to have fun. You're going to have a good time. But if your intention is to heal or to change your perception of a math test or a job interview or getting your real estate license at 65 years old, you're allowed to do that. You're the one who kind of created those thoughts and feelings around, again, I think specifically we're here talking about tests. And again, tests can show up in many forms, not just high school math test or the SATs. What about university? What about the MCATs or the LSATs to get into law school or taking the bar exam? How many people have we heard like they take the bar exam and they fail 1, 2, 3 times until they finally get it? Isn't that like a 2 or 3 day test? I know an auto mechanic here in town, and he has to, I don't know, every 4 or 5 years has to renew his license by taking this 2-day test. As you get older, it may bring up something. Maybe we did great in high school and did great in university. One of the first people I ever worked with didn't really get test anxiety until she was working on her master's degree. So this can show up in different ways and different forms, but it's yourself doing it. And again, not to blame you or say it's your fault, but to empower you to say, well, if you're the one doing this, that means you're the one who can change it. And so I'm going to take a deep breath, take a pause. Sorry. That was like most of the show.
Well, yeah. All right. So now let's connect that to test anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So what's so in terms of those files that we
Yeah.
put away, how how does it connect to test anxiety?
Well, it's that unfortunate idea of education in school, and I'm sure you've talked about this many times in the past, so I don't want to go down this deep rabbit hole, but that you basically get punished for doing badly on a test or on your report or assignment that you turn in. And the punishment comes in form of a grade. Maybe you get a D or an F, C minus. That's going to mess up your grade point average. That's going to determine what school you go to if you're going to college or university. Maybe you get in trouble with your parents. Maybe now the teacher thinks less of you and gives you less attention because they want to, give it to the A+ students. I don't know. There's this sense of doing poorly on a test will get you in trouble. And that can become fear-inducing. Some people don't care. Yeah, it's fine. It rolls off them. That's good. Or they get the attention they need and the tutoring or the extra help they need because they obviously didn't understand the assignment. But for a lot of us, that's not a great thing to do poorly on a test, to do poorly on an assignment, because we'll get in trouble. And it's a horrible feeling that we want to avoid. It's that thing of moving towards pleasure and away from pain. We want to move away from pain. And that's kind of what the sociologists and the psychotherapists say, is that that's a greater need, is to move away from pain than moving towards pleasure. So a test then becomes this painful experience. And you want to avoid a painful experience. And if you know that a dangerous situation is coming, you're going to get the warning signals. And the warning signals may come in the form of anxiety. The anxiety may create a physical response of even nausea or headaches or sweating. Maybe it happens a few minutes before the test. Maybe it happens days, knowing that the test is going to be on Friday. And the issue becomes, One of the aspects of being human is what you practice, you get better at. What is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. And so if you're practicing the piano, you're going to get good at the piano or the guitar, violin. If you dance, you're going to get better at dance or martial arts. Certainly, you don't get a black belt on your first day of martial arts class. You got to practice and get better. And then you end up getting your black belt, learning to walk as a kid or riding a bicycle. What you practice, you get better at. But what if you're practicing anxiety, especially as it related to a test or to job interviews or auditions, if you're an actor or a musician? And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that area between 12 years old and 18 years old as you're taking the SATs and the ACT tests and all, final exams and just playing pop quizzes and things. Like I said before, one of the first people I ever worked in, why it kind of sort of guided me more towards focusing on test anxiety. So one of the first people I ever worked with was somebody, extraordinarily intelligent woman. She was studying or was kind of niching her career to become an audiologist. So hearing stuff. She's going to work with kids with hearing impairment. What an extraordinary thing to do with life. But she couldn't pass the licensing exam. This is an extraordinarily smart woman. She had her master's degree. She was top of her class in high school. She was top of her class getting her bachelor's. But then she went to graduate school, and she went to a school where everybody was top of the class. When you go to a class that had the 1-2% of top students, when you go to that school, you're now no longer top of the class anymore. You're in a sea of students who are top of the class. So to maintain and wanting that, or having that need to remain on top, she did all this extra work, extra studying, started getting less and less sleep, doing the extra credit work, the extra reports. If it was a minimum of a 10-page report, she turned in a 40-page report, that kind of thing, which is great because you're learning, you're growing, you're developing. But it also created this anxiety within her of doing better, doing great. She got an A- on a test. She needed an A++, and that she's doing that to herself. And so now she's training herself to start being anxious around tests because she wanted that A++ to do great on assignments. And she's training herself because she's practicing. These warning signals are going off. If you don't do well, then you may be not top of the class, but top 2%, not top 1%. And that wasn't good enough for her. She wanted top of the top. And so she trained herself through lack of sleep, through being nervous around tests and assignments and doing the extra work, to be nervous around tests to the point where now she's niching. She spent at least $15,000 to train as an audiologist. Took her about a year. The starting salary as an audiologist was $80,000, and that was some years ago. So maybe it's probably $95,000 at this point. And she couldn't pass the licensing exam. And that's embarrassing to tell your family and friends, once again, you didn't pass. And it was something insane, like $600 per test, whether you pass or not. And so finally, she came to me, and we worked at a few sessions and taught her how to, reset her nervous system and refocus her mind to release that anxiety and that stress around it. And she practiced at home with the homework, and she passed the test. And so that's the importance of this is in and of itself, your subconscious mind is trying to protect you. And unfortunately, it may just be doing so in a way that maybe is not actually beneficial to you. And so with, excuse me, so with test anxiety, it's a warning that there's danger and you need to protect yourself. You need to become aware of the danger, whether it's a bear coming at you because you're hiking in the forest. I live in Arizona, up in the mountains. It's actually snowing right now as I look out my window when we're recording this. You could be hiking out in the big, huge pine forest here, largest pine forest in the world, up at 7,000 feet, and run into a bear. You may be down south in the deserts of Tucson and have a mountain lion stalking you. Those are serious, real dangers, let alone the fight in the street or whatever may be going on. Or maybe something a little more imaginary, like the cheeseburger that's chasing you down the street, or the nervousness that you might not do well on a test. And so that warning signal is there to get your attention. again, wrapping this all up to how we started this, answering this question, what you practice, you get better at. And so just like that example of the audiologist, she was fine until she started graduate school. And then she taught herself how to be nervous and anxious around taking tests. And she got really good at it to the point that she couldn't start her career as an audiologist, even after all the training. She's great at what she did. She's an extraordinarily smart woman, intelligent woman. And yet she had taught herself physically how to block herself from, not wanting to do well, but she would get so anxious that you hyper focus and you get that kind of tunnel vision because you want to focus on the danger. This extra stuff off to the sides is unimportant. You want to hyper focus and you start to shallow breathe, and this brain of ours, 2% of our body mass, 3 pounds or so of our total body weight, takes 20% of the energy, 20% of the oxygen we breathe in. So if you're not breathing well, or even holding your breath because you're nervous and scared, you're not fueling your brain with the right amount of nutrients and oxygen it needs for optimal processing of information, for calm, rational thinking. And so it just kind of feeds upon itself, this anxiety and this nervousness, and this worry, this overwhelm. And then maybe you get frustrated with yourself and disappointed with yourself. And it just becomes this big, huge ball that after maybe even a few years, it's just the way you feel about tests, or again, job interviews. There's so many kind of tests that we have in the world. Again, an audition if you're an actor or a musician, or again, meeting the in-laws for Thanksgiving for the first time. Or, you may be retired. You're 65 years old, retired. You're now bored and, want a part-time job as a real estate agent. Well, you got to take a test to get that real estate agent license. You haven't taken a test maybe in, 50 years. And now you're starting to get nervous. Even in school, you didn't do well on tests. And so now at 65, you got to take this real estate exam and you're getting nervous. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean test anxiety isn't just related to being 15 and 16 years old. It can be in any stage of life, whether you're master's degree or taking the bar exam or job interview after getting the bar exam, being interviewed to maybe make partner at the law firm, getting up in front of court to your first time to try a case. There's all sorts of tests that we have to take. And if those warning signals are going off, good. Okay. That maybe means you need a little more practice, a little more study, warning you that there's something coming up you need to be prepared for. Okay. Well, then prepare for it. But you're also allowed to turn off the signals of those alarms. Not so much turn off the signals, but turn off the alarm. You're allowed to turn off the fire alarm. You got the signal. It's not dangerous. It's a math test, not a bear. And so you're allowed to turn off the signals, the alarms.
So with that example of the what was it? The
Oh,
the
the audiologist, the audio.
audiologist, yeah. I guess I'm a little confused with that. In that, did she, I mean, I don't know how much you were able to divulge, but
Mhm.
did she take any tests prior to graduate school?
Yeah, she's top of her class in high school. Did great. Top, got her bachelor's degree. Fine, perfect. But it was moving into graduate school. What's graduate school? 22, 23, 24 years old, and not being top of the class anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because in high school, she was top of the class, maybe even valedictorian. In getting her bachelor's, whatever university she went to, she was top of her class, easy peasy, super smart, super intelligent. But then she went to a graduate school where everybody was super smart. And she's just regular now, because everybody's smart.
Mm,
She's average. Being as smart as she
mhm.
is, as intelligent as she is, she was just average because everybody was an A plus plus student at this school. And so wanting to remain on top of way above average, she did all the extra work and tests showing where she was on that hierarchy of top students became a symbol to be afraid of, because if she didn't do well, then she wouldn't be She'd just be average. Wouldn't be on top anymore. That was just like maybe a personal goal for her, or,
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to show off or maybe impress her parents or whatever the thing was. She studied so hard. She got so little sleep. She got so nervous because of tests, because this would show how well she was doing, that she trained herself. What you practice, you get better at. Instead of practicing the piano or dance or martial arts, she was practicing being nervous before tests, because that was going to show her how well she was doing and where on that hierarchy she was. Is she just middle of the road, smart student, or is she so far superior than the smart student? And she wanted to be far superior. And I don't know. I'm just kind of using her as an,
Yeah, I'm
not
just
too
okay.
sure of her thought process, but it got to the point where, after she graduated and got her master's degree, now she, you know what I want to do? I want to focus on, excuse me, helping children hear. So she niched and she got more training, lots of money for the training. And then, okay, well, now I need to get a license to be an audiologist to help kids hear in the state, just like you would if as a doctor or a dentist or, whatever. So she needed to get a license with the state, take this test, and she couldn't pass the test because she would get so nervous and so upset. If anybody's struggled with any sort of test anxiety, again, not just a math test in high school, but if however old you are, if it's a job interview or something else, you know how that can just kind of suck all the information out of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's there for that. You studied, you know it, you could recite it to your friend at the coffee shop the week before. But then you're in that situation of either online on your laptop or actually in a classroom with a pen or pencil or something. And you get so nervous. The physiology of it is that all this adrenaline and cortisol is now moving to the big muscles of your arms and legs. It's disrupting, oxygen flow to your brain. And all of this physiology is happening because you're about to take a test. Because it's dangerous. Because maybe when you were a kid, it didn't go so well. Or maybe because this is going to show where you are on that ranking of students and you want to be at the top. And so you're nervous if you don't do well, you're not going to be at the top for whatever reason. And so it's the physiology of just like the nightmare, whether again super realistic or maybe something ridiculous like a cheeseburger attacking you on the street. It's going to change your physiology. And whether again you're being chased by a bear out in the forest, or you're walking into a classroom to take a test or an audition or a job interview or something, that physical response to armor yourself and protect yourself was going to divert energy away from your brain for rational, calm thinking. You're not breathing as well. Blood supply is moving to the big muscles. And so it's going to change how you think and feel during the actual test, different than when you were studying or practicing. Right? And so you're just going to get a different result. So the idea is before you go into that test, you need to start practicing being calm and focused and in a peaceful state of mind and body. What you practice, you get better at. So there is some practice to this, but you're allowed to do that. Practicing, because a lot of people really don't focus. They focus on the studying, study more, cram, and then you'll do well in the test. Well, again, if you're getting nervous about the test, a lot of that energy is going to be diverted away from the brain even. So you're not going to have rational, calm thinking during the test. You may not be able to access that information. So by practicing beforehand to calm the nervous system and be in a peaceful state of mind and body so you can access that information, then you can change your physiology. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. We've already established that. And so we can use that to advantage. That's one of the techniques used in hypnotherapy. Just imagine yourself, pretend that you're standing under a gentle waterfall, a blue healing energy or blue healing light to calm not only on the outside, like you're washing after working in the garden all day, all the mud and the dirt and the sweat, and washing that away to cleanse yourself. It's cleansing you on the inside. Now, there is no such thing as a gentle waterfall of blue healing energy that can flow through you and cleanse all the stress and tension out the bottom of your feet. That's ridiculous. But so is a cheeseburger chasing you down the street throwing coconuts at you. Both will change your physiology. And you can use these, techniques. And you find, hundreds of thousands of them on YouTube at this point, maybe recordings on Spotify or something, SoundCloud, of relaxing the body and the mind. And you practice this, then you can do it in the classroom. Maybe you don't even need the recording. You know how to visualize a waterfall as you sit waiting for the test to be passed out or the countdown on your laptop or whatever it is. Visualize that. And even in the middle of the test, boy, these questions are harder than I thought. Settle, feel your feet on the floor, visualize whatever the symbolism or the metaphor is for you. Maybe it is a waterfall of blue healing energy or something else, lying comfortably on the beach or whatever the relaxation is for you. And because you have practiced in the weeks leading up, you know how to get yourself in that state really quickly. Reset yourself, continue on with the test.
Right. And so it's a couple things that you're bringing up is because I feel like it's and we'll get into the
Mhm.
um techniques a
Yeah,
little bit more. We may have to do a part two to this
sure. Yeah.
conversation. But I feel like there's and I'm trying to get into the core of it, but it's like a fight or flight
Yeah.
response because, kind of again going back to the what is it? I'm sorry. The audio
Oh, yeah. The
thing,
audiologist. Yeah. Yeah. There's
audiologist,
a
I'm
word for there's a
sorry.
travel word for
But
it.
just kind of going back to that because my mind is like, okay, so because that's why I asked, like, she never took a test and she took it for the first time in graduate school, but no,
Nope.
right? Because my mind is like, and it's my counselor hat coming on is, okay, so she was always at the top of her class.
Mhm.
She was always better than the other students, right?
Yeah.
So tests weren't a problem. And it was only until she got to graduate school where she wasn't better than the class, right?
Yeah.
She was pretty much equal or maybe a little bit lower. And
Yeah.
so, and other students may have been better than her. And so when it came to test, okay, she didn't do as she wasn't the top perfect
Yeah.
student anymore. And so my mind was like, the fact that you said, okay, she got an A minus and I don't want to say freaked out, but she felt so, I'm assuming that she felt so defeated
Mhm.
by that A minus, she wanted an A plus, right? And
Right. Yeah.
so now that's telling me you are so used to getting an A plus and probably all the rewards of being an A plus student and all the praise of being an A plus student and now and all that went through college and then graduate school comes along, you're not getting that same praise. You're not getting that same reward. And so
Mhm.
that's where the anxiety starts to come in. So now
Yeah.
so now
Sort
which
of the
kind
same.
of brings me to just kind of that fight or flight response about
Mhm.
there's and again, I don't, again, this is all kind of assumption here, but because my mind is like, okay, there's something about being an A plus student. There's something about being a top student is so important to her.
Yeah.
And she was meeting that goal and she was meeting that
Mhm.
she was meeting that
Well,
goal
it was giving
and it
giving
was
her
just
pleasure.
so important and it was giving her
Yeah.
purpose and then graduate school came along and it she wasn't meeting that goal and she wasn't she was falling behind and that set her off
Mhm. Yeah.
because my mind I'm like I wonder what her upbringing was like,
Yeah.
right? Because
She
maybe
might have
being
got
an
a
ed
lot of praise and attention,
yeah.
which gave her pleasure. And now the pain of maybe not being the top student anymore was enough. It was okay. Well, the pain started the warning signals setting off of anxiety, stress, disappointment, frustration. And that just kind of, if anybody's had that experience, especially when you're, I don't want to say trapped, but you're in a situation like work, school, relationships, in-laws or family or whatever, and you really can't get out of it. You can't get out of family, really. You can't get out of work, really. You can't get out of school, really. So you're just stuck, and it just builds until it just gets overwhelming. And again, what you practice, you get better at. What is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. And if you're now practicing being nervous and anxious around tests, that the test is, is coming up on Friday or next week or the final exam next month or whatever it is, you're practicing getting into this physical state, which is now going to hamper your ability to think calmly and rationally and be able to access the information that it's not that she was a bad student. She was a great student. Okay. So you're middle of a class of an extraordinarily smart school, okay. But for whatever reason, her reasons for herself or for her family or just whatever, she wanted to be at the top. She wanted to be the top 1%. Maybe she wanted to be, you hear the lawyers or the doctors or, oh yeah, I was top of my class. I was first in my class. I was top 10 of my class. That's bragging rights. That's pretty cool. And she wanted that for whatever reason, again, maybe it's to impress the parents or just the world or herself. But eventually it got to the point where not so much that the tests got harder, but that there were so many other people who were going to do as well as she did. And she just had to try harder. But trying harder, meant lack of
Which is
sleep.
something,
And
yeah, which she yeah.
just the overwhelm,
She
the
never had
stress,
to
the
do.
pressure.
She
Yeah,
never had to try harder.
yeah,
So
yeah,
now that she's in graduate school where she has to try harder, it's like, whoa.
yeah. But again, it's not even just school. You see this in so many. You want to get that promotion at work. You know how to do the job. You know how to talk to the customers or whatever, the clients, whatever it is. You want to make partner. You want to get that promotion. And all of a sudden, the pressure of it, because there may be 10 other people wanting that promotion too, or that partnership or whatever it is, or that job, going for the job interview. Again, actors see this so many times. There's a part up and they're going to be perfect for it. And they walk into the room is that stereotype of like, oh yeah, there was like 30 other people who looked exactly like me, and they're going to audition all these people. You somehow just have to stand out. Okay. Now this starts getting a little nervous because this is going to be a good paying job. And I haven't had an acting job in so long, and the nerves. And then you hear a lot of the famous actors say, oh yeah, I'm terrible at auditions. I get nervous and I don't even know why they picked me because my audition was so awful. And it's not that they're a bad actor or they're a bad musician or whatever. It's just like, this is a different situation than practicing at home or being at rehearsal in the theater or for the movie or TV show, or whatever. It's, you have to prove yourself, and this is a test, and you get graded. And there's a certain aspect of it, not so much maybe with a math test, but with a job interview or Thanksgiving dinner with the in-laws or the first date or the second date or the third date or an audition for a musician or an actor, that, well, if they don't pick me, they don't like me or there's something wrong with me. No, it's just there's 30 other people who kind of look like you. And we need somebody who's that famous scene in that movie Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman, where it's like, oh, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too old, you're too young. And it's like, well, it's just, maybe you're just too tall. And we need somebody who lines up with, isn't 6 inches taller than the other actors,
Mm-hmm.
but we end up practicing. It's like, you don't get the acting job or you don't get to be in the production or the band, or you don't get the job, or you don't get the promotion. And you start looking at that, well, maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I'm not smart enough, or what could possibly, because you want to defend yourself from the next time. And if you can't really put your finger on it, and again, it's that thing of, If you're getting the job interview, there's probably 4 or 5 other people who had the exact same resume as you did. So they got to pick one. And it may not be anything personal. It's just, for whatever reason, somebody said something specific, or who knows? There's all sorts of psychological things. Maybe they're, in terms of that kind of stuff that people on the other side of the table are looking for or are interested in. It's not that you're not right for the job. It's just that there's 4 or 5 other people also right for the job. But you start ingesting that and trying to find, okay, well, how can I do better? Or what's wrong with this time that I didn't get the job or do well in the test or whatever. And you can start kind of getting to a headspace of protection and fear. And again, what you practice, you get better at. Yeah, that didn't happen in the first grade or second grade when it was all about the working with Play-Doh and making a creation with Play-Doh and doing some watercolor and 2 + 2 = 4 and all that. Yeah, that was pretty easy and that was kind of fun. And, doing well at, the parachute thing or whatever, you do at recess and you're getting good grades and a gold star. And you start getting to high school and it's like, what is this, algebra? What is this all about? And this is getting hard. Or now you got to learn a foreign language or, start doing chemistry or whatever. It becomes a little difficult. And if you grow up in a home where maybe failure isn't tolerated or not doing well is punished by being grounded or your phone taken away, or now you have to study harder and I'm going to study with you or something, it now becomes painful to take a test instead of pleasurable because, you got to work with Play-Doh as a little kid and 2 + 2 = 4. That's pretty easy. Now these are difficult. And if you don't do well, you're going to be punished. And so again, you're linking pain with this test or the job interview or the audition or whatever, because you want pleasure, but you mostly want to avoid pain. But if you're in a situation like school or your career where you want to advance, and you can train yourself to start having this physical response just by hearing the word test or knowing that the test is coming up next week. And by training yourself over and over again, you're just going to get really good at it. Just like, you're going to get good at Kung Fu, or you're going to get good at dancing or playing the piano or the guitar or whatever. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. And if you're practicing linking this physical response of anxiety and fear or frustration or worry to the specific thing of taking a test or going to a job interview or taking an audition, you're going to get really good at it. You're going to literally wire your brain for that. That's why they talk about brain elasticity. Our brain is always growing, always learning. That's why they tell us as we get older, as we get into our 70s and 80s, keep learning. Learn chess, learn to dance, do salsa dance, learn a foreign language, whatever. Keep learning because our brain keeps changing and learning and growing and developing new neural pathways all up until our last breath, up and hopefully at the age of 103. So we can use that to our advantage, but mostly a lot of this stuff is happening behind the scenes, behind that veil. But if we can become aware that this has happened, and I've practiced over years being nervous for tests. So that can take years to fix. But that awareness comes some responsibility in having to practice something else. Right? You can't get frustrated that you're not a good guitar player if you're not practicing the guitar. If you keep going to martial arts class 3 or 4 times a week, but really you want to be a really great guitar player, you can't scratch your head and wonder why you're not a good guitar player if you keep practicing martial arts instead of guitar, if that makes any sense. If you keep practicing being nervous for tests, you can't scratch your head and wonder why do I always get nervous before tests? It's like, well, you keep practicing that. And so the homework of this, and if there's some deeper issues around tests or building confidence or something, hypnotherapy can help you with that. But the second part of that is you're going to need to start practicing being calm, cool, and collected when taking the test. You may even want to go so far as to arrive to class early if this is a possibility, and practicing being in that room, in that chair, at that desk, maybe listening to a recording before class starts. When I work with people who have a issue with driving, maybe they've been in a terrible car accident or something, and now there's this extraordinary fear of being in the car. And you got to be in a car. You got to go to work. You got to get shopping. You got to get across town. One of the homework assignments is to practice this stuff sitting in the car. And it may seem ridiculous and silly and weird, but every time that person gets in a car, they're practicing being nervous and afraid being in the car. And the car has a feel to it. The seat has a feel to it. The seat in the car is different than this car, the chair you're sitting in, Gabrielle, the sofa, the desk chair at work, the recliner, the dining room table chair. These are all different chairs that feel different. The bucket seat in your car, or maybe the big long chair, whatever you call it, feels different than any other chair you have. If you're the one driving, your hands on the steering wheel, your foot going from the brake to the accelerator, that's firing neurons. And one of the big issues around this that we haven't gotten to yet is that neurons that fire together wire together. So we have, again, this goes back to that lightning storm. A lightning storm is happening because all these neurons have connected together. So when you perform an action, think a thought, feel an emotion, oftentimes all at the same time, all those neurons will link together if you do it over and over again. That's how we get good at things. The guitar, the piano, the dancing, martial arts, walking as a kid. Watch a 9-month-old, 10-month-old learning to walk. It's all clunky and they're falling over because those neurons haven't connected yet. But that pattern emerges and they all link together. And now we just walk down the street. We don't have to think about it. Well, Pavlov, if you remember Pavlov, heard about him from school. He was the guy who had the dog that would drool whenever he fed him. If you have a dog, a cat, you know that when you open the bag of food, the can of food, the dog comes running. And what Pavlov knows, he had one of those big dogs, Great Dane or something, that the dog would drool whenever it was feeding time. The dog would hear the can of food or bag being opened. The digestive system would turn on for the dog because it knew it was going to be food. It's not that the dog was saying, okay, now turn on the digestive system. It just happened automatically because it had linked that sound, not the doorbell, not the TV being on, but that sound of the bag, the sound of the can to being fed. So the digestive system turned on. Part of that is saliva in the mouth, of course, but so much saliva on the big dog that it would drool. Smells the food, sees the food. This is all firing hundreds of millions of neurons in the brain at the same time to register the smell, register the sight of the food, to register the hearing of the bag, turning on the digestive system. All the energy now moving to the digestive system, turn on and create more saliva. All these neurons, hundreds of millions of neurons firing, they all link together. Well, he saw this and he knew that neurons that fire together, wire together, brain cells that activate at the same time will link together and connect together. So he started ringing a bell. Bell has nothing to do with being fed, but he ring a bell every time he fed his dogs. Now there's another million neurons registering the sound of the bell, neurons that fired together, wired together, so that connected with all the other neurons around feeding time. Eventually, with some practice, there's that word again, he could just ring the bell and the dog's digestive system would turn on without any food around. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And so in going back to the car example, somebody's afraid of being in a car because of maybe an accident or something else has happened. They're wiring all those neurons of fear and anxiety to being in the car. If they're the driver, hundreds of millions of neurons to turn the steering wheel, like a little kid pretending to be turning the steering wheel. You're doing this, right? Your foot is moving from the brake to the accelerator over and over and over again. Let alone if you have a stick shift. Millions of neurons to drive a car. Now linking to the anxiety and the fear being created in the brain, the chemistry of that. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So how do you undo that? Well, you practice being calm and comfortable in the car. Now you can imagine, as you're falling asleep or maybe you're on the couch or something, you can imagine yourself in the car. That works too. But imagine sitting in the car, in the driveway, in the garage, in the parking spot, not on, you don't have the key in the ignition or anything, parking brake is on. But you're sitting in the car, but you can pretend to drive it like a little kid. Just turn the steering wheel, move your foot from the brake to accelerator while you're listening to a recording to relax in the body. And now you're linking being relaxed to driving the car. That's one aspect of it. That's one part of that healing work. You can do the same for a test. If it's possible, one way of, especially if you're going to be in the same classroom over and over again for a semester, go to class early if you can, or on an off day, and sit in the classroom for 15, 20 minutes, longer if you can, if it's comfortable and allowable, and listen to a recording while you sit in your seat, wherever you're supposed to sit, or maybe it's one of those, just pick a seat whenever you get there. Pick a seat. And if it's one of those classrooms where you just first come, first serve, go to different parts of the classroom and practice this. Or if you're at home, you're going to do your work or your online classes in probably a specific spot. So pick that specific spot, open, like here in my office, open up my computer, maybe put on my headphones or earbuds or just have it playing out loud, and practice recording in my desk chair in this room, and practice being relaxed and calm and comfortable. And you'll train yourself to be calm and comfortable in that space, in that room. And that's half the battle right there, because there's spatial triggering happening, because a classroom feels different than a cafe, which feels different than a movie theater. They're just rooms with drywall and maybe wallpaper or paintings on it. It's just a room, but it means something different because it feels different. Even that class that, especially maybe back in high school, you have so many classes you got to get to during the day. It's the same class at the same time every day. And maybe there's that one class you didn't like. You weren't good at it. You didn't like the teacher. You thought the teacher wasn't very good, or the teacher didn't like you. So it was a very uncomfortable, maybe even hostile class for you. It's just drywall, the same desks, the same bookcases, the same maps on the wall as every other room. But that room feels different, right? And so maybe there was a class you really loved, and you loved the teacher loved you. It was a great experience every day to go to that class. That room feels different. And even if you were to go to your 10-year high school reunion or 20-year high school reunion, and if the classes, look relatively the same, the building looks the same, pretty much you go to that classroom, you'll feel it. It's like, oh boy, this is that class I really hated. And then you go down the hallway, down the building or other side of the building, you go to the class that you loved, it will feel different, assuming the classroom looks relatively the same, because there's a spatial awareness of the car, of the classroom. And so if you're doing, school, you're doing your training in a classroom, you can train yourself to feel calm and comfortable in that classroom. Even if you have to imagine, maybe it's not appropriate, or you can't just go to class early or stay late or go on an off day, it's not appropriate or it's not possible. Imagine yourself. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, and will change your physiology to match what you're thinking and feeling. Even something realistic like a war veteran or a veteran having a nightmare about the war. They're safe and comfortable in bed. War was 30 years ago, and yet imagining that, having that dream, that nightmare, changed their physiology. We can do this. This is what hypnotherapy uses, a lot of this, the ability to pretend and to imagine. Therefore, change your physiology, therefore change how your brain is working. And practice that, and you'll literally rewire yourself. It doesn't take a long time. It doesn't take years and decades. So by practicing this, even if it's not appropriate to go to the classroom to practice this, sit on your couch or in a desk chair or wherever is comfortable for you. Close your eyes and imagine that you're sitting in the classroom. Mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And here's a quick example. I know I'm going on and on, but this is a really cool research that was done back in the 1990s. And MRIs were becoming really advanced. SPECT scans were coming out. Researchers could watch the brain in real time. This is really new and exciting because before that, all they had were sociological experiments and research and autopsies. But now researchers can watch the brain in real time. So one group of researchers wanted to watch the brain learn something new. So they brought a bunch of volunteers in to practice the piano, to learn the piano. They didn't know how to learn how to play, so they taught them simple little scales and exercises, little songs you learn as a beginner. And they came in for 2 hours a day for 7 days. That was the length of the research, 7 days. So they had the group who was practicing the piano every day. They had a group, the control group, who didn't do anything. And they didn't learn anything new. They didn't do anything new. You want to compare and contrast. At the end of the week, here's a brain that didn't do anything new, didn't learn anything. Here's a brain that learned the piano. What are the differences? Compare and contrast. Okay. But what was fascinating about this research is he also had a group who only pretended to play the piano. So they brought them in. They didn't know how to play. They showed them the simple little scales and little exercises and the songs you learn as a beginner. But instead of sitting at the piano, they sat on the couch or the recliner. They closed their eyes and with their imagination pretended to play the piano. At the end of the week, 7 days, they looked at everybody's brain again, the MRI, and the control group, nothing changed in their brain. They didn't do anything. They didn't learn anything new. Nothing changed in their brain. No big mystery there. That's what they figured would happen. That's what happened. The group who played the piano, they put their hands on the keyboard. They worked the keys with their fingers. They heard the music with their ears. They read the sheet music with their eyeballs. They developed they developed a neural network in the part of the brain for music and learning. Of course they did. They're learning music. They're doing something different. They're practicing every day. They're doing a physical playing of the piano and hearing the music. Of course, they're developing a new neural network. Neurons firing together, creating a pattern. They developed a new neural network, brain cells connecting together, part of the brain for music. Of course they did. They're playing music. Again, no big mystery there. But what's fascinating is the group who only pretended to play the piano developed the same neural network in the same part of the brain, even though they didn't touch the piano, they didn't hear any music, they didn't read any sheet music with their eyeballs. They just pretended. The mind cannot tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, and literally rewired the brain in about 5-6 days to look like they are piano players, even though they never touched the piano. That's extraordinary. And that's very exciting because it also, research at the University College of London states that it takes 66 days to create a habit. This takes months, if not weeks. But you have to practice. And that's the thing. The people who rewired their brain to look like they're piano players, even though they never touched it, spent the time every day to practice pretending to play the piano. You can pretend that you're calm and comfortable and confident taking a test. Maybe if you have to go all the way back to remember when you were a kid, 5th grade, 6th grade, and you're calm and comfortable taking a test. Okay, pretend and link it to actually being calm and comfortable back in the past. You'll rewire your brain elasticity. That's what, again, they want us as we get older to keep learning, keep growing, because we'll change our brains. So you're allowed to do that. It's just if you don't and you continue feeling that anxiety and getting nervous and getting upset stomach and maybe sweating, you're wiring that into your brain. So you just got to ask yourself, what are you practicing? What are you willing to do to take the time to reset your nervous system, literally rewire your brain so that you now take tests, or job interviews or auditions with calm, with comfort, with peace, with confidence, with courage. You're allowed to do that. And if you have to pretend, great. You rewire your brain anyway. If you've never felt, you can't remember a time when you were confident or peaceful and calm during a test, fine, pretend. Just like you can pretend you're standing under a waterfall of blue energy that's moving through your head, mind, and brain all the way down to your toes, dissipating and evaporating and pushing out all the stress and tension. I can guarantee you that's not a thing, but you can pretend and it'll literally change how you feel. So that's the work of it. There's no magic pill. There's no snapping my fingers 3 times. There's no look at this watch swinging back and forth. There's the practice of it. And there's deep healing work we can do in hypnotherapy sessions. But there's also the part 2 of it. And what you practice, you get better at. So again, that's maybe a long answer to a short question. But it's important to be aware of how you're walking into that test. Does it start 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour before, 3 days before, a week before? Becoming aware of it because is really important. And um, by just pretending, by just practicing, you can literally rewire your brain. Proven, you know.
So basically what you're saying is it's mind over matter, right? So it's
Very much so, yeah.
how how you're thinking about it,
Yeah,
right? Just bringing it back to instead of well, not bringing it back, but I guess instead of thinking about it as fight or flight, as oh my God, I'm about to die, right? Like just
right.
thinking about it like, this is and it just kind of goes back to like cognitive restructuring where it's, this is no different than any other test, right?
Right.
Or um, you know what, I made it this far, right? Why not, right? So it's just, or like you were saying, just pretend, or how they say, fake it till you make it, right? So just okay, pretend you got it,
Yeah.
right? So just kind of put
Yeah.
put that
Well,
image in your mind of
yeah. And I think you hit it right there. Cognitive restructuring, because that's what you've done. If somebody's anxious about a test or interview or, a promotional interview, um, interview to get promoted, an audition, you weren't born being nervous about a test. Certainly weren't being born nervous about going to an audition. You did some cognitive restructuring to now link that physical feeling of anxiety and nervousness and fear to the specific task of taking the test or the job interview or what have you. So you've already cognitively restructured yourself. That's the way to say it. So just do it again. You already know you can do it. You have trained yourself to be nervous. You weren't born again. You weren't born with. Sometimes there's this humanness of like being afraid of snakes or spiders or something that maybe you were born with. Or, there's certainly debate about that, but certainly you were not born being afraid of tests. Certainly in preschool and kindergarten and first grade, you were not afraid of tests. Somewhere along the line, you had some cognitive restructuring by you. Yes, through a traumatic event of maybe being humiliated in front of class, giving the book report, or maybe getting a D or an F, and parents got mad, teacher got mad. There was some cognitive restructuring that you did. And again, it's not to blame you or say it is your fault. These are, extraordinary circumstances that are often happening unconsciously. But if you can take responsibility for that, that means you can change it. If you realize you're the one who, restructured yourself cognitively, that means you can do it again, right? And that's where it becomes really empowering and really exciting because you don't have to live with it. It's not that people just say, oh, I'm just nervous taking tests. Well, you weren't born like that. You learned how to do that. You trained yourself. So train yourself to do something else, you know? And that's the power of this. It's the power of the brain, power of mind, to change how you feel in your body. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to turn off the fire alarm that's going off because it can be scary to take a test. So cognitively restructure yourself again. And, whether it's, again, there's lots of stuff on YouTube you can find in terms of calming nervous system down, working with somebody one-on-one if you need to, if you feel, whether it's a talk therapist or a hypnotherapist or some sort of coaching or tutoring or something. But also, taking the time each week to do this practice work. If you're wanting to change how you feel about tests or job interviews or auditions or whatever it is, you can do that. But it just might take a little bit of effort. Years and decades? No. We're talking months, if not weeks. And so by practicing this, maybe even every day, taking 15, 20 minutes to imagine yourself in a class or at an audition or a job interview or something, and being in a calm, peaceful state, maybe while listening to recording or having those binaural beats that you can find on YouTube or something else, then you can literally restructure your brain. You cognitively restructure yourself and literally rewire your brain. But you got to do it. You know, there's
Yeah.
no, it's sort of like our physical health. It's like you just don't get to go to a personal trainer once and work out at the gym twice, and now you're in shape for 50 years. You got to you got to go to the gym, you got to work out, or go to the dance class, or go to the spin class, or CrossFit, or whatever the thing is. It's like we know that with our physical health, but the same with our emotional health, our mental health, our spiritual health. You just gotta. There's a certain relentlessness to it, and that's not what probably people want to hear. But people maybe know the Dalai Lama. He's head of the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual community. Man's 90 years old. He still meditates every day. There should be no greater master of Buddhism and meditation and that kind of spirituality than the Dalai Lama, kind of the Pope of the Tibetan Buddhists. But he still meditates every day. He still practices. Any masterful guitar player or piano player or violin or whatever instrument, they practice all the time, if not every day. Martial arts. You get a black belt in Taekwondo, you're going to have a big ceremony, you're going to have a big party, you're going to big celebrate, and the next day you're going to be back in the dojo practicing.
Hmm.
It's just the way it is. And so if you can take some time every day, even just 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, to be aware of how you feel in your body, maybe even rank it 0 to 10, 0 being the most peaceful, 10 being the most anxious or panicked you've ever felt in your life. Where are you? Maybe it's a calm day, it's a 1 or a 2 or a 0. Maybe, a test is coming up or a job interview or the in-laws are coming over or something. And so it's an 8 or a 9 or a 9.5 or a 10. Okay, now you know where you are. And if you have some tools, you can start calming your nervous system down. And if you practice that, you can learn to do it pretty quickly.
Hmm.
If you ever like in a situation where you are out in nature and you turn the corner and there's a big bear there, or you're down in the desert and there's a rattlesnake, all of a sudden just rears its head up and starts rattling its tail or whatever, a fight breaks out in the street or something, you're instantaneously in that stress response. You turn that corner, you're instantaneously. It doesn't take 10 minutes to get you into the stress response. It doesn't take hours and hours. It's instantaneous. So you can do this pretty quickly, but it does take some effort and some of your time to start practicing this stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, there's a lot that we could dive into this, and I feel like we only scratched the surface, so I got to bring you back on. But yes, but I am going to start to wind things down. So on hot topics, I like to have my guests give words of wisdom to our audience. I know you shared a lot of wisdom today, but is there any last minute words of wisdom that you'd like to give before we part?
Well, yeah, I think, I've said it a bunch of times already, and I think it's important to know uh, that you can change. You have changed. Again, you weren't nervous. You weren't born being nervous about tests or job interviews or auditions. You had to learn that so you can learn something else. What is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. What you practice, you get better at. And even just a really quick exercise, let me end by showing you a really quick exercise. And I could spend a whole hour and a half just talking about the biology and of this, but it's called 3-2-1 reset. Really quickly, this is something you can do in 5 minutes, and it'll reset your nervous system, literally change the brain chemistry in your head. It'll literally hack your brain, hack your nervous system. The 3 stands for 3 slow, gentle breaths. You breathe deeply into your abdomen so you get air into the bottom of your lungs. This brain takes 20% of the oxygen you breathe in. So breathe lots of oxygen in, settle yourself, ground yourself, close your eyes if it's safe for you to do so. Certainly do not do this in your car or anything like that, watching the kids around the swimming pool. But if you're in a safe place and you can do this exercise for 5 minutes, just close your eyes, breathe in deeply. This vagus nerve that goes from the back of our head, attaches to the eyes, to the ears, the muscles of your jaw, goes past your vocal cords, attaches to the heart, to the lungs, to the gut. The vagus nerve is a big part of the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response. So by breathing deeply and gently, you're going to stimulate the vagus nerve, therefore activate the parasympathetic. How simple is this? Deep, slow breathing, Then with the 2, you're going to create bilateral stimulation when you're feeling that anxiety and fear and you're lighting up a part of the right side of the brain. These other parts of the brain go quiet because it's absorbing all that energy. There's only so much blood and oxygen that can be in this skull of ours. So it absorbs it all because it wants to fire and wire and create this anxiety and fear, this warning system. So one way to undo that is bilateral stimulation. Whether you're drumming on your knees, you're walking, it's moving both sides of your body, left foot, riding a bicycle. Here's my little squeezy ball. You can move your arms back and forth like this because I'm now firing on both hemispheres of the brain. Or you can grab your shoulders. This is a hug. And just like when you touch a hot pot, a signal goes up your nerve into your brain, says you're touching a hot pot, let it go, it goes back down, you let it go. Well, this hug is sending a signal. This is nurturing, loving, healing touch. It's a physical, somatic exercise that you can do. And this is sending a signal, even though you're giving the hug to yourself, it's sending a signal up to your brain. If that you were feeling anxious, the brain will start creating GABA, the hormone GABA, which will dissipate and eliminate all the adrenaline and cortisol. So your brain now floods with oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, literally hacking your brain. And then with 1, you're going to think of a person and start accessing the visual parts of the brain. You can think of a person you want to give a hug to. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's one of your children. If you have a dog, a cat, if a good friend, maybe somebody who's no longer with us, your grandmother, your grandfather, somebody that you admire in the world, maybe that's alive today or from history, Mother Teresa or Joan of Arc or something. Breathing slowly and gently, giving yourself a hug, thinking of that person you want to give a hug to. 5 minutes, you'll reset your entire nervous system and change the chemistry in your brain. 5 minutes. And if you do that before, if you practice that, and then if you're feeling a little nervous before a test or job interview or audition or something, do that exercise. Go to the bathroom, find a private place to be, sit in your car. But do that exercise and you'll reset your nervous system, flood your brain with oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. Then how's your day going to go? How's that test going to go? How's that job interview going to go? You're going to ace it. You're going to nail it because now you're in that parasympathetic nervous system of the relaxation response. So again, long answer to a short question, but lots of different kind of exercises, somatic exercises where you're using the body, which is very useful and helpful. You can find these again on YouTube or maybe recordings on Spotify or something. But yeah, it's all about the practice of it, and the more you practice, the better you get at it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, I do want to kind of throw this in, but I know you say the more you practice, the more you're better at it, the better you get at it. But my thing is like, and yes, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Yeah.
Practice, practice, practice. But if you're doing, but you have to practice the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You can't just, you have to practice. Taking the, I guess you're not really practicing taking the test, right? You're practicing being calm
That could
while
be
taking
part of
the
it.
test,
If there's a
right?
specific class, if you do great in history and social studies and English and whatever, but it's math or chemistry, you may want to practice taking math tests. You may want to talk to the teacher. You say, hey, I get really nervous and upset. Do you have practice tests I can take that are similar to what will be on Friday's test? Ask for help. That's what the teachers are there for. If you need tutoring, go to tutoring. If you need something deeper, like there was an experience, maybe known or unknown, that you've had in the past, whether last month or last year or 20 years ago, of being a kid, do something like talk therapy or hypnotherapy if it's more of a subconscious issue. Find coaching, find tutoring. Ask for help, and if and part of it, and again, there's not one size fits all. There's 8 billion of us on this planet. We will all have different attitudes and responses and reactions to tests or job interviews or auditions or what have you. So it's not one size fits all, but if it's specifically about this one kind of test, maybe practice that test. If it's about being in a classroom, writing it down, and you're practicing on the computer all the time, yeah, that may be unfamiliar to you. So you may want to be in that classroom writing. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things. That's where coaching comes in. An educational coach like yourself, or tutoring if you're maybe don't feel you're understanding the material, or if there's some deeper issues, maybe talk therapy or hypnotherapy. But you don't have to do it on your own, and you don't have to figure it out on your own. There may be other experts like Gabrielle here, or a talk therapist, or a tutor, or a hypnotherapist like myself, who can help move past those barriers that are keeping you. And again, it may be that the whole issue is it's math tests. You do great at history, you do great at poetry, you do great at music, you do great at everything else. It's math tests because back in the third grade, it didn't go so well. I don't know. Again, there's 8 billion people, and there's probably at least 8 billion different ways of experiencing this. So there could be different needs of practice, of what needs to happen to calm down that warning signal of the anxiety. So,
So that's, I mean, so that's one of the things that you're saying that we could do is just take more tests.
could be. I mean, that may be it. But the thing is, it may just be practicing being nervous before tests. That's the thing. There's like not one size fits all to this. There may be some underlying computer code within the subconscious mind, or a file in that filing cabinet of issues you've gone through, the hurt, the pain, the trauma, the embarrassment, the humiliation, the anger, the fear, in that filing cabinet that needs to be resolved. So it may not just be practicing. That's kind of part two of this. Part one is identifying what the issue is, if there is one. Again, that's where the talk therapy comes in. That's where working with somebody like yourself comes in. Maybe a hypnotherapist. Hypnotherapist is great at uncovering the unknown stuff that's behind the veil in the subconscious, that 95% of mind. So there may be something that needs to be resolved or new instructions put in, but the second part is definitely the practice of it, because you want to train your nervous system. You want to rewire your brain to be able to take tests in a calm, confident manner. If you've been practicing taking tests, maybe specifically the math, I don't know why I'm harping on math, maybe because obviously I didn't do well in math, but if you've been practicing being anxious before all tests, or just a single subject like math or chemistry or music or whatever, there may need to be some practice around just feeling calm and comfortable taking that test, or tests in general. So the part one, dealing with the blocks, the lack of confidence, the hurt, the pain that may be associated with taking tests. Again, kind of a big part of our educational system is being punished for not doing well. So there may be something linking that pain and punishment to tests. So that may need to be resolved. Again, somebody like yourself, Gabrielle, or talk therapist, hypnotherapist, something else. There may be an issue of not understanding the material. So you get nervous before walking into a certain subject. Maybe that requires tutoring, or again, somebody like yourself, Gabrielle, or maybe it's just like, okay, I practiced so often because everybody else gets nervous before tests. I want to be like everybody else. So I practiced being nervous, and now I want to stop it. Well, that part may be practicing being calm and comfortable. So again, there's not one size fits all, as you know. Even if the issue is the same, I don't do well in math, I don't do well in tests, I don't do well in physics. So, okay, but the issue around why you're not doing well may be different. And so this is where the kind of needing to discuss it with somebody and how to move forward. But I guarantee you, one of the, at least when working with me, what I'm going to tell you is like, yeah, we'll do some couple of sessions, 2 or 3 sessions of hypnotherapy and resolve this issue. But part two is going to be practicing what you want. If you want to be calm and confident during test taking or job interviews or auditions or whatever it is, then you need to practice that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Well, Craig Meriwether, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on
You're
Hot
welcome.
Topics and diving into this with me. I'd love to have you back on so we could dive into this
Yeah,
some
definitely.
more. But yes, but it is promo time, so let's do that. All right, you guys. So you could find Craig in many places. So there's two websites that are up on the screen right now. So one of those websites is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy.com, and the other website is aceanytest.com. So those are two websites to learn more about Craig and his services and the things that he has to offer you guys. So those are two websites that you could check out. He's also on Facebook for the hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
So Facebook is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. I just got it on the screen. He's also on Instagram with AZ underscore integrative underscore hypnotherapy. He's also on LinkedIn. It is his personal LinkedIn, Craig Meriwether. And he is also on YouTube, Arizona Hypnotherapy
Yeah.
or integrative hypnotherapy.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Too many of them
Sorry,
nowadays.
let me just
They're
double.
all a little bit
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
Arizona. Okay, Arizona Integrative
Yeah,
Hypnotherapy.
if
There
you
you
just put
go.
Arizona Integrative, and I know that's a mouthful too,
Mhm.
and don't let the Arizona fool you. I work with people around the country and around the world, actually. So, um, because of Zoom, something done, unlike this, because you feel comfortable and relaxed in your homes, it works really well. Whether talk therapy or um, hypnotherapy or coaching or tutoring or doctor's appointment, where the research shows is Zoom sessions work as well as in person. And there's been some research that shows Zoom sessions work better than in person. So it's allowed me to expand and open up around Arizona, around the country, around the world. And if you have any interest in learning more about hypnotherapy, as you can tell, I like to talk about this stuff. So happy to get on the phone with you or a Zoom call or just email and talk about this stuff if you're interested.
All right, there you go. So you, so you, so are you only online or you do in person as well
I do
for
in
your
person, but I live
area?
in
Okay.
Flagstaff, Arizona. It's kind of a small town up in the mountains, sort of by the Grand Canyon.
Mm.
Some people know where Sedona, Arizona is. We're about 40 minutes east of Sedona, about 90 minutes south of the Grand Canyon. Beautiful little mountain town. Like I said, it's snowing right now. We're at 7,000 feet. I do see people in person in Flagstaff if you have to be coming through town, but I'd say 85% of my sessions nowadays are over Zoom. I'm, not to brag, but just to kind of show you the power of this. I've been working with a professional basketball player in Lithuania and France. He used to be in Iceland, the France one. Then he got traded to Spain, and then he got picked up by France. But they're Americans, but they're in the European League. And the basketball player in France got my name from somebody he knows who lives in Puerto Rico, who I worked with. And so, again, not to toot my horn too loudly or pat myself on the back, but just to show you the power of this. I'm working with somebody in Switzerland on Friday, and so again, not to brag about it, but it's just like shows you the power of this work. You can be anywhere, as long as we can line up our time zones, we can work together. And it works powerfully over Zoom because, again, you feel comfortable and relaxed. You feel safe in your homes. You don't have to drive across town on a Friday afternoon during rush hour traffic to get to your appointment. And when you're done, you're at home. And so I used to have an office in Phoenix, Arizona. Um, I just, during COVID had to close it because everybody wanted to do Zoom, as you probably know. And it just everybody loved the convenience of it, and again allows me to operate on a wider scale. So if you're interested, don't let the Arizona fool you. Just one of the best ways probably to find me, because I know Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, I'm not great at naming businesses, uh, is a mouthful. If you just go to Google and search Flagstaff Hypnosis, in the Google search, you'll see Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy pop up, and just email me or call me from there.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. But of course, I like to put the, direct website out there.
Yeah.
So it's
Be,
just kind of point A to B.
yeah.
But yes. But yes. So for those of you watching on video right now. The information is at the bottom of your screen. For those of you listening on a podcast, the links are in the description. So one way or another, you have access to Mr. Meriwether here. But yeah, so I'll just say the websites one more time. So it's the first one is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy .com,
.com. Yeah.
and the second one is aceanytest.com. So if you happen to be in Flagstaff, Arizona, and you happen to be in the area, pop on by. If you're on Zoom anywhere in the world, connect with Craig, and he can work with you and whatever issues that you may be having. Let me just make sure I get these other things as well. All right, so you have uh program yourself for
Yeah.
confidence. Download 5 free recordings today. So this is from aceanytest.com/boost your confidence. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's just a little a handful of recordings to use for your practice to boost your confidence. Just a little kind of nice free giveaway uh, to if you happen to find yourself on Ace Any Test, and you'll find it in the menu um, up at the top of the pull down menu. You'll find the program yourself for confidence or something like that. But it'll be very obvious, and it's just recordings to download to practice with to boost your confidence for whatever, whether it's a test or again an audition, speaking in front of public or something else.
All right. Awesome. 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 All right. So, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So there we go. All
There you go.
right. So all of that information, I'll just put it up one more time. Is on the screen right now for my video people, but for my podcast people, for my audio people, um, the the links are in the description. So one way or another, this information is at your fingertips. All right. Well, Craig, thank you again for coming
Thank you,
on
Gabrielle. I
Hot
appreciate
Topics.
it.
Let's
Yeah,
do this again,
definitely.
and
Yeah.
I will now let you go. I will
All
now
right. Thank you, Gabrielle.
part. Thank
Bye.
you. All right, you guys. So I know we scratched the surface with that. There's so much more to dive into that. So hopefully I might plan to have him on for part 2, but um but until we get there, let me just take this moment to remind you guys about the powers that be behind this Hot Topics podcast. So this podcast is a production of my tutoring company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, and as Craig mentioned a few times throughout the episode, I am a tutor, and one of the things that um and one of the services that we offer is test prep, and of course that comes with test anxiety. Although it's you see it in different areas at school, but particularly test prep. And with test prep, we focus on more of like the high stakes ones. So things like the SAT, things like the SHSAT for New Yorkers. So those are the tests that like really rev kids up, right? Because as we were, I was as we were getting at in the episode, and hopefully we can dive more into this in part 2, is there's the social pressure behind it, right? So when you the things like the SAT, well, it's optional. It used to be required, but now it's optional, and it's been optional since COVID in terms of college admissions, but the pressure is still there because, you know, you there's going to be the kids that choose to take it as opposed to kids that don't take it. And so I usually say that I usually say now that it's optional, I recommend that you take the SAT because now, that puts you ahead of the game, right? Because now that you're choosing to take this extra step, um, I find that it puts you ahead of the game, as opposed to someone that just elects not to do it. But it's still that pressure because of it is a difficult test, and in recent years it's switched to digital. So it's like four grades wrapped up into one exam, and so and there's these pressures that comes with it. There's the pressures of getting above 1,000, right, which is what I usually recommend. um there's the pressure for families about, you're a smart kid, so why are you scoring so low on the SAT, right? We want, you're okay, but we want you to do better, right? So there's those familial pressures, and then there's those societal pressures about, we want you to do better, we want you to do better. And then there's the pressure of, we want you to get scholarships, right? Because there may be that financial pressure of, we want you to score high so you can get that scholarship. So that's less money that we have to pay because college is expensive. And so you have these financial pressures, and then it's like, we want you to get into honors programs. So that is the academic pressures. So there's a lot of pressures that go with the SAT, for example. And then you have the SHSAT for New Yorkers, which is getting into specialized high schools. That is even more pressure because you could only take it twice, which is eighth and ninth grade, and the schools look at the score. So that's the only thing they look at. So, so when you have that pressure of, this is the only thing that they look at, the score is the only thing that they look at, and this year, 2025, is the launch of the digital exam. So now there's kids. So just um, for the sake of the time capsule, so it is now December 2025 that I'm recording this. So last month in November was the launch of the new SHSAT in the digital format. So the paper format is now gone. So imagine being those kids taking this computerized format for the first time and being that eighth grader, and then you have those the familial pressures of, you need to score really, really high in order to get into that specialized high school, because the specialized high school is for the really smart kids, and you have access to all these smart colleges, right? And there's those societal pressures, there's the familial pressures. Um, so, and all that is it's centered around things like the SAT, and especially the SHSAT, which is the admissions test into a specialized high school. And then you have the gifted and talented test, right? For the younger grades, right? And so it's, you have to take this in order to get into gifted and talented, because you want your kid in the smart programs, and because they have more access to the schools with the higher resources, and which is a gateway into those good colleges, right? And so it's all these societal pressures that kind of come behind taking these tests, right? And then you have like the LSAT, which I think is the one, I think that's the law one. I might be wrong on that. And I think the MCAT, that one is med school, and then the MCAT is another. Oh, we don't do MCAT, but the MCAT is another one, right? You have to achieve you have to get a really high score in order to become a doctor, right? And then depending on the score of the MCAT, that could be the difference between being an MD and being a DO, right? So depending on what your goal is. So then there's that. So, there's the MCATs, and there's the bar taking the bar exam, right? If you do not pass the bar, you can't be a lawyer, right? And so you have that pressure of, and you have to achieve a really high score um in order to become a lawyer, right? And it's that societal pressure of, if you don't pass this test, you can't reach this goal, you can't reach this career, you can't get into this school, and then it's that pressure of success and that pressure of high achievement and that pressure of glory, right? So that kind of circles around these tests. But all that to say is, and hopefully again we could dive all that into part two, but that's those so kind of bringing it back into our services, if you find yourself in that situation, or you might be a parent listening right now, and you have a child who you want them to go into the specialized high schools, and then you have a high schooler getting into college. So maybe test prep is one of those services that you're looking for, and they get nervous. There's the societal pressures, there's the family pressure, right? And so one of the things that we include in our test prep services is not just, excuse me, it's not just testing strategies, but it's also mental strategies, right? In terms of, okay, listen, you got this. But and thinking about it now, especially, what Craig was talking about is, maybe you may need to just take more tests to get more comfortable. And at first I was skeptical about that, but now that I think about it, it's like, I can see that, right? Because especially if you have the SHSAT, and you sign up for tutoring 3 or 4 months in advance, right? You can access the practice tests online, but those are the paper ones, by the way. But I think there's two digital ones that you could do. But there's also like other like private testing companies that kind of manufactured their own computerized exams. But all that to say, there are practice tests out there that you could take, and that's one of the things that I personally do as a tutor when it comes to test prep, is doing the actual tests, right? So things like, even like the SAT, whether it's the actual old SATs from the College Board, or it's the ones that are manufactured by private tutoring companies. I highly recommend College Board, by the way. Whether it's directly from the College Board, or whether it was created by private tutoring companies, those are good ways to become familiar with the testing structure, and it's difficult, and now it's kind of funny with the transition to the computer exam, the transition to the digital exam. So it was easier with the paper test, because it's you saw, um like the SHSAT, for example. It started off with revising and editing, right? So that it's 57 questions on the ELA and 57 questions on the math. And then particularly with the ELA, it's split into revising and reading comprehension. And the revising was, and it wasn't a 50-50 split. I believe it's not coming to me how many. I don't remember how many questions there were, but it was split between the two. So now but then you knew on the paper test, it was the revision that was first, and then it was the reading comprehension, and then it was the math. So now on the digital exam, on the computerized version, there's the reading comes first, right? And that's one of the things that I noticed in the new computerized exam of the SHSAT. That's the one I'm talking about, the one for specialized high schools in New York City, is the reading comprehension is first, and then the revision is second. And I also noticed that the reading comprehension is, I think it's like 40, 43 questions, I think, out of the 57. And then, well, no, the, the revision is 9 questions. And then the reading comprehension is 47 questions, I believe. So there's more reading comprehension, right? So all that to say is I think practicing the more practice test does help, and that's kind of bringing it back. So that's one of the things that I personally do as a test prep tutor is getting the old exams and going over it with the students, because then you familiarize yourself with, it starts off with the instructions, and then you see the aesthetics of it, and they tell you the time, and you see the answer choices, and you see the stories, and you see the types of problems that they ask you. And when you familiarize yourself um with the number of questions, right? So going back to the SHSAT, it's one of the things that I instill in my students is, okay, so there's 57 questions on the ELA section, and there's 57 questions on the math section. And even now in the computerized version of it, right? It's still 114 questions overall. So it's still 57 on the ELA, 57 on the math, and it's the ELA that's first, but the ELA is split between reading and revision, and it's the reading comprehension that's first, and that's the longer part of the test. So if you have the revision part, which is the shortest part of the test, then you have the reading comprehension, which is the second longest, and then you have the math, which is the third longest, right? So you're memorizing the structure of the test, the actual format, and you're keeping that in mind. So when the more familiar you become with the format, with the number of questions, with the order of the questions, the font, the spacing, the colors, the more familiar you are with the test, the better you are, and the more confident you are. And even the types of questions that they ask, because I did notice with the I do have a theory that a lot of these test makers, they're recycling questions, so get you may see the like old questions pop up in the new one. So I do have a theory that they're bringing back a lot of old questions and putting it in the new one. So it does help to review the old ones. So yeah, so even if you are taking the new digitized exam, it is a different structure, it is a different look. So you're practicing the new structure and how that looks, right? But even that, I would still go back to the paper test just for the sake of the content itself and the types of questions, right? But of course, it's better to practice the format itself. And so bringing it back, I'm going off on a tangent here, and I'm approaching 2 hours, but I will. That's one of the things that I do as a test prep tutor is reviewing, practicing the old exams, right? So even if you are taking the digital exam, yes, definitely practicing the digital version, but even including the paper versions, because a lot of I find that they're bringing back old questions, they're recycling the old ones. So definitely pay attention to those old ones, but also it's the same type of question, so definitely like angles pop up a lot on the math section. So knowing your angles, um, um, system of equations is another one, right? Knowing your circles, right? So all of these things, it does pop up. it tends to pop up again. So when you do the questions over and over and over, and you see patterns of, I see they're asking the same type of math question. I see they're asking this, they're doing the same type of reading comprehension. I see the same type of attention in poetry and the same type of attention in prose. And when you start paying attention to those testing patterns, that's when you pick up on that more, and you grab it more, right? And so that's where the confidence comes in is, okay, they're asking the same types of questions over and over. And so now that I see the patterns, now I can capitalize on that and use that to achieve my high score. And then I know what to study because I know there's a certain amount that's going to be poetry. There's a certain amount that's going to be prose. There's a certain amount that's going to be on angles and system of equations. And so I know these are the things that they keep asking. And so I see that pattern now. And so that's what I'm, now that I know what to study, I can capitalize on that, right? So those are the things that I implement as a test prep tutor. I'm speaking about myself personally. So definitely looking at the old exams, but then not just the old exams, but also targeting specific topics. So yes, going over the old exams, practicing the digitized exams, getting the new version, but also if you target specific skills. So like, okay, like on the SAT, for example, there's a lot of grammar, right? So it's not just, so it's more than just practicing the actual test and testing strategies, but also targeting single topics. There's a lot of questions about grammar. There's the punctuation, there's the possessive nouns and the pronouns and subject verb agreement, right? So targeting those specific things, that's something that I also do in my test prep tutoring as well. So not just familiarizing yourself with the format and the structure of the exam and the test prep strategies, but also targeted practice as well, and singling those topics, those specific topics that you're struggling in, and targeting the ones that you are doing where you have more difficulty with, and then targeting the ones that you have more difficulty with as opposed to less difficulty, like those are the things that I do as well, as a test prep tutor. Um, so yes. So, kind of all that to say is that one of our services at a Step Ahead Tutoring Services is test prep. So, if you're a parent and you see that your child needs more test prep practice, more familiarity taking the exam, more comfort in the exam, less anxiety, less nervousness. Um, if your child needs something like that and needs those services, let our tutors help you. I myself, I am a tutor, so maybe you'll get me as a tutor. But if you are looking for those services, um, our let our tutors help you. Let our company help you. So now let me get to that website. So that website, it's been scrolling below this whole time, but I'm just gonna just say it for my anyone listening on a podcast. So that website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So you go to that website. There's a request a tutor form. Go there and you fill out the form to request a tutor, and then you indicate that you are looking for test prep services. We also do one-on-one tutoring. If we also do, yeah, one-on-one tutoring. We do college counseling. We also do collaborative editing and proofreading. So if you're looking for any of those services, you can tick the boxes as well. But definitely test prep is one of the things that we offer. Um, so we do in person for our local area, which is New York City and Nassau County, Long Island. But for those of you in Suffolk County, Long Island, unfortunately, we are only virtual at this time, but our virtual tutors are just as good as our in-person tutors. So for those of you in Suffolk County, Long Island, I highly encourage you to consider our virtual services. Or even if you, but our virtual services are anywhere in the United States. So I just want to make that clear. So I am I'm curious about other countries, but right now we're just the United States. So so for any across the country, we do offer virtual tutoring, virtual test prep, virtual tutoring, um, virtual editing and proofreading. So we do all of that virtual across the United States. But for anything in person, it is local to the five boroughs of New York City and Nassau County, Long Island. So just wanted to put that out there. So just so you guys know. And while I'm at it, I also encourage you guys to follow us on social media. So we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube with the account name A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, which is all one word. We're on X and TikTok. So that name is ASATS2013. So make sure you guys catch that. And we're also on Eventbrite and WhatsApp. It is our business name with the words spaced out, which is A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So make sure you guys catch that. But of course, if you have missed any of that stuff, you could always get it from our website, which is once again www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And while you're at it, I also encourage you to follow me personally on social media. So my name is Gabrielle Crichlow. I am the owner and director of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, and you can follow me personally on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So Facebook and Instagram, it is Gabrielle dot Critchlow, and on LinkedIn is Gabrielle hyphen Critchlow. So pay attention to the subtle punctuation differences. But yes, but you can follow me personally on. Matter of fact, I encourage you to follow me personally on social media as well. So you could follow me professionally and you could follow me personally. Okay. And excuse me. Ooh, we officially broke 2 hours. So I think so this episode has broke the record for longest episode as of now. As of December 2025, this is the longest episode of Hot Topics. So woohoo, we broke another record. But yes, before I run, I also want to encourage you guys to leave your comment about today's episode. So let me just kind of expand on that. So if you're watching this on video, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, there is a comment section. And I implore you guys to leave your comments in the comment section below or in the comment thread. For those of you listening on a podcast, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Good Pods, there are comment sections. So I implore you guys, take like 5 minutes of your time and leave your comments, leave your feedback. Did you like today's episode? Did you hate today's episode? Did you have questions? Was there things you wanted us to expand on more? Whatever feedback you want to leave, I encourage you to leave your feedback in the comment sections. And those of you on a podcast, listening on a podcast particularly, you could also give us a rating. So I would also love it if you rated us as well. So all of your feedback, it does help in terms of the algorithm, which is pretty much a fancy word for the robots control us. The robots control what you see. So basically, the more feedback that you leave, the more that it circulates across social media and the more that it circulates across the internet as a whole. Because the internet rewards popularity. So So help me spread this message, you guys, and also just leave your feedback in general. But 5 minutes every time, leave your feedback in the comment sections, probably down below or somewhere on the side. Or even if you're listening on a podcast, there are little blobs of text. Well, not a blob of text, but there are little boxes where you can drop your feedback. So I'm asking for like one or two sentences, you guys. Don't just drop emojis. Don't just drop gifs, but write an actual sentence or two. So give me an actual sentence or two. That helps me a lot. Um, that will help me a lot, and that will help us as a whole as a company, but that will definitely help me for sure. So just actually write a sentence or two. That will be very helpful. But yeah, so please take like 5 minutes and leave your feedback in the comment section down below or on the side. And also give us a rating for those listening on a podcast. All right, you guys. Well, that is it. I am officially concluding this episode. I have officially broke 2 hours. So as of December 2025, this is the longest episode of Hot Topic. So a brand new record. This is a new record. Love breaking records. But yes, but I thank you again for joining me on another episode of Hot Topics. I look forward to you joining me on the next one. And who knows, maybe we'll break another record. Let's see if we can break 2 hours. Who knows? Um, but yes, thank you for joining me for this episode, and I look forward to you joining me on the next one. Thank you guys. And now I am signing off. Bye.